Welcome back. First off, there is no definitive evidence linking Bayshore High School to cancer cases. However, several suspicious factors are causing Manatee County leaders to get involved in a new investigation. Last month, Charlie Kennedy, the chairman of the Manatee County Commission, said, quote, "I'd like to say we are getting ahead of this, but we are probably 25 years too late." The old Bayshore High School was torn down in 1999. Those following the situation claim there are 88 alumni who have died from cancer, 156 who have had cancer, 100 with autoimmune diseases, and 64 alumni who have had children born with birth defects. The county commissioner's vice chair says there's a preponderance of this information and it is statistically significant. We can't let this go. And joining us for more is geologist David Woodhouse, who used to work as a consultant for the Environmental Protection Agency, Cheryl Jonza, an alumni of Bayshore High School, who is a major advocate for further investigation, and John Rehol, who is a reporter for the Bradenton Times. And John, you have done incredible stories on this, and you've all been dedicated to this issue. The question that came up in my mind when in Kate's story, she showed some of the testing that was done. Why do you think that was insufficient in terms of evidence in this case?
Well, I could, if you wish. Sure. Well, there's two types of chemicals we are dealing with here. One group is called, or are called, the floaters, and these would be the petroleum hydrocarbons, gas, diesel fuel. They tend to float on top of the water table. The more important ones are what they call the sinkers. These are what they call the dense non-aqueous phase liquids. They are deep in the fractured rock, perhaps even at the bottom of the aquifer. They sink until, quite literally, they go to China. All the Monin wells that were put in were shallow Monin wells. They were perhaps 20 feet deep, even less. Right. So any contaminants, and these are the chlorinated solvents, most likely are below that depth, which they will never find unless they put deep wells in.
And it's also very important to point out that what was below the high school were old oil drums, container units, but there, you know, as Kate reported in her story, there were EPA Superfund sites from different industries around the area. Do you suspect that is part of the problem? And has there been any evidence that people living in the general area have also been affected by this?
Absolutely. About a year ago, Dr. Richard Clapp, who's a renowned epidemiologist, most noted recently for his work on the Camp Lejeune case, took a look at our self-reported numbers, and he said that they were statistically significant. And he said he had a list of what type of toxins and contaminants that probably would be the cause of the injuries that we have self-reported. And this recent discovery of the old Riverside Products property just a mile north of the school has a lot of those exact contaminants.
John, this has been kicking around for years. How come there has not been, up until now, a more serious investigation into it?
Real simple. Nobody wants to know. You can look everywhere in the wrong place and you won't find what it is. I myself, over the last 3 years, I haven't found any help. Like they totally run from it. I've sat down with Galvano and Boyd and Stubbe, and they've all promised they're going to get with me, and they keep brushing me off. Nobody really wants to know.
Why do you think that is?
Well, because having way over 1,000 meetings that I've covered in the last 6 years, I see how they run away from everything all the time. And what they do is they want to bring people here. Maybe they're afraid of a cancer cluster here isn't going to be such a lure.
Because if there were one, and that is, from my experience, very, very difficult to prove, but you would imagine that the liability would be tremendous, which, you know, begs the question, what is your motivation in terms of pursuing this?
The motivation is first of all, we have a right to know what was there, what was in the water. We still can't get them to tell us where the source of drinking water was. The 2007 soil testing and environmental testing that they keep referring to, at the bottom of page 2 and into page 3 was where they were asking to provide that source, and they never did.
All right, we are just getting started. We'll pick up the discussion right after a check on our weather, so stay with us. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are discussing the joint effort by the Manatee County government and the school district to investigate alleged links between Bayshore High School and what some suspect is a cancer cluster. Our guests tonight are David Woodhouse, a geologist and a former EPA consultant, Cheryl Jonza, an alumna of Bayshore High, and John Rehal, who is a reporter for the Bradenton Herald Times, who has done incredible work. And Cheryl, let me start again with you, because your motivation is obvious. I mean, this is very personal, but based upon years of almost ambivalence, what drives you to keep pushing to find answers?
I would say not only for the personal answers for my own family, but for each family that I meet and I hear their story. And it's heartbreaking.
Is it difficult, David, because when you investigate things like this, you are dealing with people's lives and their families and their loved ones, but you also have to deal with science and facts. I'm sure in your work with the EPA and other organizations, you have found cases where there is a cancer cluster and there isn't.
Well, I have to be honest, most of the cancer cluster cases I've worked on turned out to be cancer cluster cases. It just amazes me what's under the ground and how much of that we're not aware of.
Because many times you can't see it.
You cannot see it.
You can't taste it. You can't smell it.
And again, it's the nature of the chemical. If there's a oil or gas leak, everybody knows it because it's right there.
Let me ask you all this in terms of your suspicions. Again, we've talked about what was buried below the high school property, but there's been so much made out of what the area around there, the Lockheed Martin buying American beryllium, the other companies around there. Do you have any evidence that the real contamination that may have caused these cancers are from these other companies and not necessarily what was below?
Well, I don't think at this point in time Lockheed is liable for any of this. The contamination is originating, much of it, north of the old high school.
And what's up there?
Riverside Products, a Superfund site which used chlorinated solvents. The investigators found plumes of chlorinated solvents, including vinyl chloride. And just by chance, vinyl chloride happens to cause very, very rare cancers, which are found, guess where?
Then Cheryl and John, has anybody approached the federal government, which I would imagine has more resources to investigate things like this? Have you contacted the the EPA? What have people been told?
I contacted the CDC about a year ago and spoke with the Assistant Surgeon General, and he directed me back to the state. But then the state directs you back to the county, and we get nowhere.
Well, we have a governor that pretty much kicked the EPA out of here on the Kathleen thing, with as far as the radon and gas, and refused to let them land at one point. They put a bill together to try and stop it. As far as when they threaten, the first thing that pops up, even in the memos on the Riverside, when they were going through, every first memo that came through was saying, make sure you know that we're not responsible. It's always been who's responsible. It's never been, but they shouldn't be playing that card because of the $300,000 cap. No lawyer's going to come in with anything like that on both the school and the county. They're using that card with you know, falsely using that card. They're staying away from having to. They don't want to find out.
Let's explain this. And people at home may be wondering this. Is there a limitation in terms of whatever kind of potential legal action that families could make that is precluding?
Okay, well, it's my understanding that this type of a lawsuit, if there was a lawsuit, it would be called a toxic tort lawsuit. And the school district and the county are protected under sovereign immunity to my understanding. So therefore, like John was saying, that just limits the amount of money. So the cost of getting in to prove this and to get into court.
But not if the contamination, or at least a lot of the contamination didn't come from what was underneath the school, but came from those Superfund sites that you were talking about?
Well, I don't think it would make a difference in terms of, as I understand it, the county has a financial limitation on how much they could pay out. These cases I've worked on, they cost literally maybe $1 million to hire the experts just to prove what is being contended. So I hate to say it, a deep pocket is always looked for.
Right.
When you have these cases. But north of the site, again, there are industrial businesses right now that I'm positive at this point in time are the cause of many of these cases.
And I want to get to that in one second, but when you deal with lawyers, you're dealing with cost-benefit ratios,
Correct.
and if they can't make money, they're not
Correct.
going to take the
Exactly.
case and invest the money to investigate, because it gets down to that question that the doctor said in Kate's story. What needs to be done is to make sure you contact all the alumni from the school.
Absolutely.
And the people who live in the neighborhoods, but I would imagine you don't have the resources to do all that.
Well, I've tried for a year and a half. I've been trying to find out who was on what well water, because there's public wells. It almost for sure was contamination from a public well. The kids that got most sick were the football players, the gymnasts, and the cheerleaders. They all played outside in the sprinklers, and they're around it. We know with the groundwater modeling that you can't stop it from going certain places. So there's pretty much no doubt. But what the county has done is put a lock on the finding out, because all we need to do is to put out flyers, put them in the utility bills, also put it in the paper and add in the paper. They got to want to know. If they want to know, they'll come in numbers far exceed cancer cluster.
And let's get, I mean, this is not a court of law or
Yeah.
anything like that, but when you're talking about the chemicals, specifically the chemicals that that are being reported here and the links to cancer, David, what do you see?
I see a direct link. Again, I was amazed by the comparison of what we have here with what I've seen in the past. Now, arsenic seems to be one of the main culprits here. On the original property, in the environments of the property, they used to have pits full of arsenic where they used to run the cattle through.
That was before the school was built.
Yeah, but the arsenic is still there. It doesn't go away.
So can't that be tested today?
Yes, you could, yeah.
If you test in the right place.
You have to go in the right place.
The testing, if you look through all the testing data, it was very limited to very shallow testing. They weren't really looking for it.
So Cheryl, the obvious question is, do you have any confidence in the investigation that is being undertaken today that there will be a real honest effort to find the answers that you're seeking?
I would like to hope so. I still hold out hope.
And what do you think is at stake here?
I believe that there's people out there that may be sick that don't know, and they might be ignoring their symptoms, and early detection is key to probably saving somebody's life.
And I would imagine that there are a lot of families who have lost a lot of loved ones who are just looking for answers as to,
Correct.
Is this why?
Anybody can put themselves in that seat, and they don't have to think about it for a second to know that that's all they're going to think about.
You know, one last question here. And I know that you talked about your suspicions about the governor and the state's position, but has anybody directly appealed to the governor's office, to the governor himself?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, I tried to get Galvano, and I tried to get Boyd, and all of them. I tried to get them to take those steps, and they refused to do it. I contacted the health department in Tallahassee. You know, I worked diligently on this to try and find somebody to take. But as long as they don't want to, if they don't put out a flyer, if we don't get a formula for how we're trying to find out how many people have it, it'll float around like this because they don't want to go there. They don't want to open that door.
One final comment, again, just based on my background, I'm amazed that no entity such as the Board of Health tested the well water over all these years to see what was in the water. The Clean Water Act was in place at the time. I used to be a water commissioner in Massachusetts. We tested our wells. I cannot understand why there are no records of testing these wells if thousands of students were consuming water that might have been contaminated.
All right, let's take a quick break, and when we return, we'll have final thoughts from our guests. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, a new round of testing shed light on what's causing so many Bayshore High alumni to become sick or die from cancer and autoimmune diseases. Our guests join us right now for final thoughts. And John, as you have investigated and reported this, what kind of feedback or pushback have you gotten?
All the time. I don't get records. I request records. They give me stuff that they've already sent me. They give me stuff that's totally irrelevant. What needs to happen is if they want to do it, all they need to focus on the numbers. We can't keep assuming that there's poison here, poison there, and keep looking everywhere. The numbers are there. They're going to far exceed if they would just send the flyers out and the utility bills with the timelines and the alumni.
David, the obvious question, after all these years, the school's been torn down some 20 years ago. Is the evidence still underground?
Yeah, I think in the case of the arsenic, which I think is one of the major problems here, causing the brain cancers, there is an active release going on right now, which is about 3 miles north of the old school, and it's flowing through the fractured bedrock, taking its time, and it still can be tested. In case of the chlorinated solvents, there might be a pool of contamination still there.
Sure. How frustrated are you? You've put this 10 years of your life into finding out answers in terms
13.
of 13. Okay, I stand corrected. That you've made it this far, and now there is this investigation, but it should have happened sooner and more seriously.
I'll take it. And it's just my hopes that, because we're dealing with health issues, with water, and it's the school district. It's the school district's property, but it's the county's responsibility to make sure our water's safe. And their department also takes care of cancer clusters.
Right. Good luck to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks to our guests for being here tonight.
Thank
David
you.
Woodhouse is a geologist and former EPA consultant. Cheryl Jonza is a Bayshore High alumna who is advocating for further investigations, and John Rehill is a reporter for the Bradenton Times.